Welcome to the RVA Returners Podcast, your newest source for all things Final Fantasy TCG. There's a lot of games. There's a lot of decks you can play right now and still feel comfortable about it. And with that being said, welcome back to the RVA Returners Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Adams, and with me is Adam Lane. Adam Lane, say hi to everybody.
What's up?
But once again, for the second week in a row, we're missing our third wheel, the head of the Voltron, as it were. But that's all right. Domestic life kicks in sometimes, and sometimes you got to take care of your sick wife. So that's all right. But we got a lot to talk about today. We had some adventures coming back from Boston. We've played in a couple tournaments since then. Nothing big, just a couple the local weeklies, but have been they've been really solid. And then I think we're going to spend the bulk of the time talking about how the meta's kind of it's pretty established right now. Opus 5 is here. We know what people are playing. Granted, yes, there's still room for discovery, but not much. Like most of the decks that are being played right now are pretty much what you're going to expect going forward until Opus 6. So, with that being said, Adam, let's go ahead and talk about the drive back from Boston, and we stopped at Fredericksburg at your hobby place for their Sunday weekly. We had the time, so why not?
Yeah, it made sense. Like I think we brought it up.
Yeah, I told him
at some point.
Oh yeah, and I was like, I'll go as long as they don't mind a grown man in his pajamas running around, because I definitely wore the jammies the entire drive back. It was a quick drive too, so it didn't feel bad.
It wasn't that bad. I mean, it was still like 10 hours.
Yeah.
Or so. But I mean, yeah, we just hit it on the way back. Got there in time, like an hour to spare. So.
Yeah, we definitely jammed some games, and so what did you end up playing? I honestly don't remember what you ended up playing.
So I ended up playing the other deck I had like two decks going into Charlotte that I had to decide on, and one was Mono Ice, which is what I went with, and the other was the Carbuncle deck.
Wait, you mean Boston? I think you said Charlotte.
Yeah, I said Charlotte. I meant Boston.
Yeah, you just woke up from a nice power nap. So.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, Boston is what I meant. So, it was the Mono Ice, which I went with, and the Carbuncle deck, which I decided was kind of like I wasn't ready to play yet.
Deck's still really good.
Yeah, so I was like, if we're going to go to Fredericksburg, I'm just going to play this, see what happens. So, yeah, I went with that. I mean, I tweaked the deck a little bit from what the guy had in California. When I saw the deck, I thought the deck was really sweet, and I think it could still be I think it could be like a pretty big meta-breaking deck, honestly. But I think it is pretty hard to play.
Oh, I agree. Because there's just a lot of lines, and it does seem like it's a very reactive deck. You have to play a little bit slower and kind of play to the pace of the opponent. At least that's how it looks when you're playing it. But that's still not a bad thing because there's so many blowout plays in that deck. And you went with that, and I went with Water Lightning Knights, and because that's I'm a big fan of Ramza, a big fan of I'm a big tribal guy. In every game that I've ever played, I've always played tribal decks. So when there's one that comes along, I at least have to give it a shot. So I ended up finishing 3-2. There was 5 rounds. My 2 losses were to Steven and Lauren, both of them Mono Lightning. Steven just blew me out. Now, granted, I learned after the fact that I think he misplayed because he was hitting me with Gilgamesh S, the one that Divider, with him not having 4 points of damage.
Yeah, he requires 4 points of damage for you to be able to attempt to use it.
And I didn't know that. I'm still busy trying to learn how to play this deck, so I'm not worried about what his deck is doing. And when I lost to Lauren, who was also playing Mono Lightning, I lost because... when I say I lost because I turned my card sideways to swing, all I had to do was say, pass. And then... she just loses next turn.
Yeah.
So and it was clean too. I had nothing to worry about. Just misplays. How did you do, Adam?
I ended up 4-1, and which ended up being enough for me to win.
Well, that's right, because your tiebreakers were better. Jason, I think, was your only loss.
Jason was my only loss, and the game was super close, and I thought I had it. I was in control the whole time. And then he was able to just put a Renoa down, and I decided to deal with it. The turn it came out pretty much because I had a way to deal with it, and I figured I was gonna win in 2 turns anyways. But I didn't know that he was also running Bartz in that deck, so it was Wind, Ice, Earth. I think it's 3 colors. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
It might have just been Wind Ice. I don't remember off the top of my head, but and Bartz had 5 jobs, and then it was just and he was able to just keep my stuff tabbed down. And then the turn after that, he was able to swing through. And then by the time I was able to ready everything back up, and I had to keep enough stuff back to like be able to defend his Barts. He played Shimhaze.
Yeah.
And that's what blew me out. Had I seen a summoner that game, I think it would have been okay. Just leave it upright and be fine, but I never saw one.
Yeah.
But people were having a lot of trouble dealing with the Carbuncle shenanigans.
Oh, yeah. I noticed your matches were just starter Yuna with Carbuncle on the D is just... It's so strong. There's just so many good plays with that card in that deck.
Yeah, I think once you get like 2 forwards out with Gravitron and Carbuncle in your hand, it just gets pretty ridiculous. Because as long as you know how to keep like moving the power around so that no one ever reaches above 9K, it just gets crazy. So with like Yuna and Porum, and then whatever else you have, it doesn't even matter what the other card is.
Oh yeah.
And you just filter the Gravitrons to like the stuff that's already going to push it above 9, and you just filter the Carbuncles into the smaller stuff, and then eventually you just have like a board of like 9Ks.
And that deck runs the new Earth Cecil, right?
It does.
Yeah, and that I can't say enough good about that card. That card can just push through things, and you don't even have to worry about it. So yeah, ended up having a pretty good day there at Fredericksburg. We hung out for a little bit, then we came back. Life gets back to normal as usual. But then Tuesday night, we're back into the swing of things at our shop. We had a really good turnout this Tuesday. We had 11 people show up for our weekly. We've really pressed these last 3 weeks. Having a $5 tournament where, you pay your $5, you get a pack just for entering, and then it's pack per win. So because we want people to at least play, and we also allow proxies. That also allows people to try things that maybe they don't have. The 3 walls or the orphans or some of these new higher dollar legendaries. And it's like, proxy them up. We know what they do. Just put a piece of notebook paper that says orphan on there, and we'll figure out the rest. You know what I mean? And attendance has gotten better every week.
Strangely enough, how many people are proxying.
And that is funny.
I tell them every time because, I think they just want to play with what they have, and that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
I understand that. But yeah, we've gotten quite a few new people. A lot of people asking us, like, what they think they should change their deck to. So we've been helping people with their decks like every week.
Oh man!
And then we have like the usual suspects that come out. But yeah, no one's been proxying that I've seen at all. Yeah, which is funny.
Yeah, it is funny. Like you said, we do have to kind of tell them, it's like, hey, if you want to play, an optimized version of what you're playing, feel free to play what you're playing. But maybe you should try that orphan in there. Maybe you should try this card in there. Give it a shot. See how it goes. You're not. And if you're winning and you're winning packs, maybe you can, either switch the packs for store credit and get those singles that you need to fill out the deck. So we like giving people the opportunity to play what they want to play and have the chance to win, to get the things that they need. But again, so for that tournament, I decided to play Knights again. It was 4 rounds. Ended up going 2-2, and both of my losses were once again me not knowing the deck, or not knowing the deck. But both losses revolved around whether I should kill a Lua or not off of an Odin EX burst. And really, when I say that's it. That's the only thing that made or broke those 2 games. And against you, I know you were one of my losses where I had the opportunity to kill a Lua. I don't think I did. I think I killed Gilgamesh instead. Which, at the time after the game, you said you had all 3 Aluas. You saw them in your opening hand or something like that.
I had 2.
Okay.
And then drew into the 3rd one.
Yeah, so I think regardless, I can get over Gilgamesh with my guys. But at the same time, I was more worried about him being able to pump himself. And that's what I was doing the math on that, not realizing that, turns out Alua's a problem. And if you have the chance to get rid of her without having to spend the extra resources, you just do it.
Yeah.
And my other loss was to a Wind Lightning Final Fantasy Tactics kind of hasty Weenie Hut Jr. is what he called it deck. And same thing, he had a Dell and a Lua on the board. In my mind, I was like, well, Alua's the problem. Let's kill her. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, man, I messed up. Because Alua's not a clock, especially when I have bigger guys that can block. But a Dell's a clock.
Yep.
That card is the one I should have killed, and I regretted it immediately.
Yeah, it's tough. The choice between those 2 is really tough because they're both so strong.
Yeah.
And so a deck that runs both it makes it hard for you to try to figure out which one you have to kill, because Alua is going to require generally like more things to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
But Adele, like, you could kill her with that first thing, but also she's just gonna keep making herself unblockable every turn.
Yeah, you have she's a problem that, I mean, like I said, she's a clock. She's a problem that has to be dealt with before she can start swinging through. Alua, you can at least block. You can at least beat her in combat.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so I ended up going 2-2. My tiebreaker, and we always cut to top 4. We would like to have more, so we could cut to a top 8. But for the first week ever, I wasn't in the top 4. But you know what? That was awesome because one of the newer guys who started playing, Shazad, made it into top 4, and I was like really happy. It was like a proud dad moment.
Yeah, he's been playing since the beginning, like right before Opus 5 came out. He started playing, and he's like really set on like Windwater, like YRP, and he's having fun with it. So
yeah, and his deck keeps getting better.
Yeah, he keeps adding. He's another one. Yeah, I keep telling him like, if you want a proxy, man, you're welcome to proxy. But I know he's running like YRP. He has like Blitz Ace Titus is in there and stuff like that.
Yeah, he tends his favorite game, so he's playing a deck around and he's doing better. And that just also speaks to like the way this game is. If you know your deck and you know the ins and outs and the routes and the lines of play, you can do well. And that'll kind of be a segue into the next segment. But Adam, let's talk about how you did at the weekly. I know how you did.
Yeah, I didn't lose at all. But also, like, I think more people were trying to have fun. I know Drew was on Earth Ice, so maybe a little bit less fun. But I went with Mono Lightning just because I wanted to like. I want to keep playing the deck, so I want to realize if like this is the deck I should just keep playing, or if like, or at least like learn how to deal with it through
just by the interactions, sure.
Because like you said earlier, like Alua is a card that like you have to deal with.
Yeah.
Alcid is still there. You got, I mean, the build I'm running right now doesn't run Zemus, but Zemus is still very much a card,
very real threat.
And then yeah, like people are afraid to swing at you because you have like Odins and Adios. So it's
yeah. And that, when you and I played, like, you know, I just to go back to that match, I had a really solid board state. I want to say I swung with Ramza, couldn't really kill a Lou, and first thing you flip over is an Odin. It's like, well, all right, and then like it just kept tumbling down beyond that, and it was just like, well.
Yeah, the version I'm playing is like more of the faster version, like more like Andy Carmona's list. So you have like the Hildebrands are still there, Alua's in there, like more of like the hastier stuff. Just try to like get ahead fast, force people to swing through to me, and then I just like kill them with either like EX bursts or punish them for swinging.
Oh yeah,
so
and the deck's good. Like Mono Lightning is just a really really strong deck. But yeah, and I think, you know, I'm going to be continuing to use the locals, at least the weeklies. To try new things. Obviously, I know you were just saying that, you know, you're still looking for maybe a deck that you can have that you can keep playing. I already have that because Fire Ice is definitely the deck that I'm going to keep playing because I've done well in 2 major tournaments. And I'm just, you know, there's no reason to stop until I'm given a reason to stop playing that deck. I'm just going to keep tweaking it to reflect how the meta is currently. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, yeah, so I think next week I might try, I might jump on my retooled Mono Earth, or maybe I'll try like this Ice Water build I've been working on that runs like 6 and 12, really abusing Ash and obviously the good 6 cards because I love those cards.
Yeah, I'm going to have a little bit more fun next week. I'm either going to play like some sort of Moogle deck. So I'm either between Ice Fire and Ice Water, one of those two, or I'm going to play Wind Lightning of some form, probably.
I think Wind Lightning's good.
So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm looking at now. I'm probably going to try to have a little bit more fun. I just wanted to, like, I've played it a couple times, but, like, I've always, like, kind of pushed Mono Lightning to the side every time I go to an event, because I'm like, I don't want to play that.
Right.
But I need to, like, seriously consider it, to be honest, because I think it's really strong right now.
And at least knowing how to play against it. Because, you know, if they're sitting across from you and you know all 50 cards in their deck, you're like, well, I know what I can and can't do. I got to assume they're holding this. It does help you be a more well-rounded player for sure. So with all that being said, you know, shout-outs to everybody that came to Tuesday. Shout-outs to everybody up at YHP. You know, we're going to be up there next Sunday doing
next Sunday.
the podcast up there. Kind of a little roundtable discussion with a lot of those guys. So yeah, they do good things up there, and you know, I love seeing our scene get bigger and improve. You know, the players are just improving, and the quality of play at these things are getting. Like this past Tuesday, I think I made the post on Facebook the next day. The quality of play at this past weekly, was far and away better than I think anyone. Now, when I say that, I mean a lot of times it's just been me, you, Matt, and Drew, and we know the quality of play there. That's to be expected. But we got all these new players that are coming in. They're making smart plays. No one's making silly mistakes. And then afterwards they're asking questions. Like, the quality of play is better than it's ever been. So that's awesome. I want guys, when you listen to this, please keep it up. We're again proud dads over here. We're loving it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I hope it continues to sustain and grow. I think there's no reason not to think that it won't. I mean, everybody's having fun.
I agree. And that's half the battle.
And we're getting more people to Magic every week, or on that day.
2 weeks in a row for because Tuesday night they do their Star City game night, and we've outdone the attendance for Magic 2 weeks in a row. Yeah. One more, that's called a streak.
It's true.
So we're hoping to do that again, but so that was fun. Can't wait to do it again. But now let's get to the meat of this week's podcast, and that's talking about what the meta's kind of been established at this point, and we want to talk about the decks that we think are kind of rank them in order of what we think are the most potent, working their way down. Now I say that with a disclaimer. That doesn't mean just because we think this deck is probably the most potent doesn't mean that the fifth deck on the list can't beat it. It's a best of one scenario.
This game's also really balanced in that way.
It's super fair.
And I think someone could literally come in with a build that will just flip the meta. I think if it's good enough.
Oh yeah.
But there are decks that are just very tried and true, I guess is the best way to put it.
Old reliable, the old SpongeBob meme.
Yeah, you know what cards are good. You play those cards, and they're typically good. But like I said, I do think that this shouldn't deter people from trying new things, because I think there's definitely stuff out there that people haven't discovered yet. Mm-hmm. And I'm not I like to brew things, but I'm not a brewer. I'm more of a pilot, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I know that I am. I'm more of a person that's going to see what someone else does and try to improve on what they do and meet my needs.
Absolutely.
Rather than try to just make something out of nothing that ends up being ridiculously good. Now there are players that do that. That's just not my cup of tea.
Well, and that's fair, because not everybody does that, and more people are more. Like you said, you're more suited to be a pilot. I prefer to brew, but at the same time, when I find a deck I like, I learn how to pilot that thing to its absolute maxed out potency. So with that being said, I think we had as far as number one on our list, Adam. What did we say is as far as the meta decks? What do we have as the most potent?
So we put Mono Ice down as one, and I think that's a deck that a lot of people are really high or complaining about, which means it's probably pretty good.
It's always a good sign. So
it got some cards in Opus 5, and there's a lot of cards in Opus 4. Opus 4 is really where a lot of the cards came in that put it over the top. It had things before that, but just getting the Final Fantasy 6 cards made it so much more consistent and so much more.
Flan.
Yeah, Flan was also Opus 4. Made it hard to deal with. And then you get Orphan in this set.
Yeah, Orphan, Mateus.
Mateus is really good.
Doom Train.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, my dude, that's when we start talking a little bit about Fire Ice later on in the list. I've come around on that card. That card's insane. That card is insanely good.
Going in, and when I first was building Mono Ice, I had one in there, and I was still running Shivas, 3 Shivas, 2 Mateus, I think, at the time, and 2 Zalera. And then the more I played, the more reps I got in Mono Ice, I was like, Doom Train is just insane, and I think it might just be a better card than Opus Shiva in this deck. Not that Opus Shiva is a bad card or anything. That card's still really good. But I think now that you have Orphan in there, that is kind of like a 9K Shiva, but better, if that makes sense. It costs you 6, but it does the same thing Shiva would do, except it's an ability. So things that can't be targeted by abilities, Shiva's going to be better. But it does dull and freeze, because most of the time you're going to have the 5 characters. And at worst, it just does the Shiva. So having the Doom Trains instead of the Shiva, so I went with 3 Doom Trains, 1 Shiva in my build. And it worked out really good.
Oh, yeah. And I've actually, I've said this before, and, in many games, when you start putting spell effects onto creatures, now you've got that effect on something that can attack. You've got now on something that can block. So I think Orphan is just a better version of Shiva. Yes, it's 6 CP versus 2, but you play that Shiva once and the effect is done. You drop Orphan, even at his worst, he's a Shiva with a 9K attached to it. So now it's something you have to get over. It's something now you have to remove, or he will just finish the game.
Yeah, most of the time, and I think I've said this a couple times before, I feel like when you play him, you usually win within 2 turns unless they answer him immediately. There have been games where it's gone longer than that, for sure, but I'd say most of the time when I play Tess, he hits the board, in mono ice, that is. He hits the board, and you're probably dead in 2 turns.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Because generally, if you have 5 characters out when you play him, or say you have 6 is... I'd say it's mostly 6. Most of the time, my backup line's at 3, and I'll have 2 forwards out, and I'll drop them.
Yep.
So that's 3 forwards out, and I'm building and freezing 2 things.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to have a summon in my hand. So it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah.
And then, you've been dealing with, like, Setzer and Lock the entire game, so you probably lost a lot of your answers that you had to discard.
Exactly, and that's why we think that deck is potent, because it can play at so many different speeds.
Yeah. And then it's funny, that's a big reason why I'm really high on it. It's funny we haven't even talked about Genesis yet.
Yeah.
Which is probably the best ice card,
absolutely.
For value, just what he does. So, yeah, you stack him on top of all the cards that we've already talked about, and like you just said, like, it's a deck that switches gears very well. Like, you try to go fast on it, so it can kind of keep up with you and then force you to pitch your hand while it's, like, keeping up and building with you, because Setzer's a wall.
Yeah.
Like, you play Setzer, you better have a way to deal with him if you're a fast deck. Then with, like, more, like, aggressive stuff, or not more aggressive stuff, more controlling stuff, you have, like, Mateus and things like that to get around forwards that are harder to deal with. Earth is probably, like, the worst matchup for it, but with Mateus, the introduction of Mateus, it makes it a little easier. It makes them forced to have, like, a Titan or something in order to get around the Mateus. But it is a bit of a struggle. Like, Yang and Guy can be hard to get through, for sure. But, like, it's so consistent. It's so good, and it doesn't really have any bad matchups. That's the thing.
It's just such a... I don't know, man. Like, it's like, when you sit across from it, you really have to play at your best, because even like an average pilot can play the deck well enough that you can't just discount what you're sitting across from. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of strong players are on it too, which makes it even harder.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then so from that, we'll transition into another deck that doesn't have very many losing, if any losing matchups. There's Mono Lightning.
Yep.
So you want to start that up, I guess?
Yeah, and I'm going to say right now, and I think a lot of that comes from the cards they received in this set. Alua is bonkers. And and here's the thing, like, when you look at her, she's a 3-mana 6K, so she's understated, but she's got haste, and the fact that she just swallows up a piece of removal that targets her. Not that's only if it's, if it flips off an EX burst, then it gets her. But if you target her with anything, that target, like, say you use a Shiva to target her and something else, the whole thing fizzles.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a problem. Zemus, I think, a couple people got shown this past weekend in Boston that if you don't have an answer for that guy, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is, like, you get the 4 backups, basically, and you drop Zemus, and then at that point, they need an immediate answer to him, or you're probably bringing back an Alcid or the Dia to kill a 4-drop. There's just so many ways to swing the board at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really tough.
And then, another card that a lot of these Mono Lightning builds are running is the new Ramza. That guy, if you were to Google nail in the coffin, Mono Lightning, I'd be surprised if there wasn't a picture of 6-drop Ramza right there next to it. 'Cause sometimes you drop that guy, he's a 10K, he's killing something, and he's swinging.
Yeah, the trouble, too, here with Mono Lightning is compared to Mono Ice. So Mono Ice has cards where people will put at different numbers, and you might see a couple cards slide in differently, like Thaumaturge and things like that, for instance.
Sure.
Mono Lightning, the build can be drastically different depending on which direction you want to go. Sure, there's core cards. Alu is always going to be a 3-of. Alcid's always going to be a 3-of. With Alcid becoming a 3-of, Onion Knight's always going to be there. Rigetti is probably always going to be there. But then you have people that run more like... See, then you can branch from there. So you have, like, the builds with, like, more 13 heavy where you have, like, 5-drop Lightning. And that's how you end the game. You could play... If you want to go a bit slower, you play Zemus. Just to outvalue your opponent. If you want Ramza at the top end to finish games, you could play that. You could go more monster heavy. You could have Behemoth, and Azul is still good. Urianger is a card I think a lot of people are sleeping on, and not everybody's sleeping on because people are starting to talk about the card. And you could run him with like off-color monsters at that point to do some pretty cool stuff. So, I mean, they have a lot of options, and I think that's also what makes them scary, is because even if they drop that first lightning thing, yeah, you know some of their cards, but you don't know all their cards.
Oh, yeah.
And then a couple new Opus 5 stuff that came in that I feel like are basically staples at this point. Cannoneer.
Oh, yeah.
Is really insane. And Twilight Odin is in most builds that I see now.
And the new Scholar.
And the new Scholar.
That card's real good, too, because that just makes, when you play Al Cid, you drop a Lua, and then you can just use Scholar to finish the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Al Cid Onion Knight isn't always, like, the best play anymore, and that's what makes it scary. You know, and again, I can't say enough about a Lua. Like, I feel like nowadays you're either playing a deck that plays her or a deck that can just beat her.
Well, the cool thing about, like, the faster version is, like, yeah, you play your turn 1 backup, and they're like, okay, I'm playing against Mono Lightning. And a lot of times Mono Lightning typically wants to, like, build their backups up.
Mm-hmm.
And then turn 2, you go Alua, and you swing in their face. And now your opponent's like, okay, I need an answer to that, and it has to be active. Which then falls into the Al Cid trap, which then just, it's like a snowball at that point. Like, it's just going to keep gradually getting worse for you.
Oh, yeah, and then at the worst, it's like, okay, I need to put a threat on the board. Oh, here comes Hildebrand.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, there's like Mono Lightning is so good, and that's a deck that, you know, this is where Mono, this is one of the things that Mono Ice doesn't have, whereas Mono Ice is going to strip your hand and reduce your resources. Mono Lightning can just straight set you back when you attack because of, 7-drop Odin. Adia, they flip those things over. It's like, cool. All that pressure you were putting on, it just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, which there's 3 of those in each build, pretty much.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So the deck is very, very strong, and if you like that style of play, there's no reason not to play that deck. I find it boring. Mono Lightning is my least favorite element in this game, but I'll play Lightning cards because I love Ramza. But,
I wouldn't say it's like the most exciting thing, but at the same time, I
do you like winning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so the next one we have on our list, I think it just won Boston, which is Earth Ice. Still a pretty real deck. Even Opus 4 is pretty good.
Oh yeah, that's because I played Earth Ice in ARG Charlotte and ended up finishing 10th, and that the deck I think has just gotten better.
So you got Dodaluma is still probably like one of the core cards. Still hard to deal with. Unless you're running water and you have Minwu in your deck. Because he makes things really awkward.
He does.
You have Wool now, who's really insane. And he's like something you really have to deal with within the first couple turns, or he's going to get out of control. Because it's just going to be hard for you to deal with like their board, because they're not really going to be tapping to attack and stuff like that. Opus 4 Hecaton Chair, still one of the best summons in the game. The instant speed battle.
Yep.
This is really good, especially with like Dodaluma, things like that.
And guess what? You're still running that amazing Final Fantasy VI Ice package.
Yep.
Turns out, cards are really good. And you're still using Genesis. You're still using those great Ice cards that we talked about earlier. And a lot of Earth Ice builds are running Orphan at the top.
Yeah, but it's just like a Shiva.
Exactly. And it frees you up for the better Earth summons.
Yeah, and a lot of the Earth Ice decks that I see that are topping are not running that many Earth cards.
Yeah.
So it's like mainly still an Ice deck, but you get like the good stuff from Earth, like the Dodalumas, like the Walls, like the Hecaton Chairs. And then when you slam Orphan, you might still hit 5.
Oh yeah, and then they're running maybe Shantoto as a failsafe. I feel like if you're splashing Earth, you're clearly running Shantoto as a failsafe. I know Drew and Matt brewed up one here that was really strong. It was running like Tama and Gipple, which sometimes being able to Tama in a Gipple is kind of a blowout on defense.
Yeah, you got to be really careful when they have Tama out. You got to expect plays that you wouldn't normally have to expect.
Exactly.
It's tough.
It's the deck just has a lot of answers, and even if you play a lot closer to the Opus 4 version using like Vanille and Delita, I still think there's a lot of neat tricks you can do there. So the deck has a lot of answers and can also play at multiple speeds. It's what I would call like the textbook mid-range deck of this game, for sure.
Yeah, it's really good, and I mean obviously it just won an event, so.
Absolutely. So,
but I do think the player was also very good.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely a testament to Matthew Okimoto. It's an archetype he knows, and just really smart plays with a lot of the lines that people wouldn't normally think about. So, yeah, shout outs to him and the whole group over in Cali. So So then after that, we've got Mono Earth.
Monsters.
Oh, monsters, yes. Yeah, monsters. And I'm using this to lump several kind of decks into one, because I say monsters because they're hard to interact with. And anytime you have a deck archetype that's hard to interact with, you're going to have a bad time, because you know, in this game, when you don't have sideboards, you can't really focus on trying to beat this one deck archetype, because you leave yourself vulnerable for everything else. But if you're not prepared for monsters, they will blow you out straight up. Mm-hmm. And I guess the two most prominent builds, or three most prominent builds, are the Mono Water that Max Williams played in Boston, and then you have your Monster Mash that's 2 or 3 colors. You can run one. It's Wind, Water, Earth, or just Wind, Water. So both of these decks they make it very hard to interact, because you know you swing out, they just have all these monsters that have now become forwards, or you know their summons your summons become kind of effective. If you can't interact on their turn, you're in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, so the Mono Water one is pretty typical to like your traditional Mono Water build, where you're just going to build up a bunch of stuff and play Cognazzo in the game. And then on while you're building up, it's really hard for you to interact with backups and monsters, so you're just building water characters up, and you have Lena to recycle things back in. Well, the new Porum is just
stupid,
straight card draw pretty much. Yeah, and then you got the Wind Water one, which is more they're going to play monsters because they're hard to deal with, and then just eat you up with summons that normally wouldn't be great in certain decks, but because it's a monster deck.
Yeah, like cards like Famfrit,
Veilfor, become basically board wipes at that point. And then cards like Yen and Death Gaze just being harder to deal with. And a lot of things just don't have monster destruction, and if they do, it's 1 or 2 ups in their deck.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, if you can hit those and deal with a really key monster in a certain situation, it can be pretty bad. But the problem is all those decks are running ways to recycle things a lot of times. Because you have Fisher now, and you have Gao. Realm just is basically a card draw, essentially. She might be the best card in the deck now. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And, then you have the more Earth one, where you run Chantoto at that point as an extra board clear. You get access to a few more EX Burst stuff. Yeah, like
Mustadio and 6-drop Atmos. And sometimes that deck just outpaces you, and it's such to me that's about the closest thing to a Magic style control deck, because you've just got things that they can't interact with, and every time you play something, they're just removing your stuff. It's hard for you to get anything going. Does that mean they're unbeatable? No, because sometimes those decks stumble. Sometimes they don't draw the pieces they need. Sometimes you have an answer. Oh, they got that Cobalt Droid. Well, here's a 2-drop that you can't get rid of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's tough, because like you said, there's just a lot of things you can't really mess with. You can't interact with what they're trying to do. And a lot of times they're going to take early damage to set up and then just kill you. And if you overextend, you get Shantoto'd. And if you don't put too much stuff on the board, then you have to worry about other things. And it's there's just a lot of things they can do. Yeah. But a lot of their stuff that they want to do is pretty high cost. So,
and the monster decks aren't really that easy to pilot. You do have to play slower. You do have to play, again, a more reactive game. You just can't slam your monsters down and just that's why we don't have it higher on the list, because that deck you really do need cards in your hand for that deck to be effective. And if Mono Ice strips all your cards, you're probably not going to win, because you need to build backups. You need to be able to play your monsters and have the mana to activate those monsters. Which is kind of funny. The first card you would think of would be something like Emperor. No, those monster decks don't even worry about Emperor. There's so many ways to deal with him now that they drop and it's okay.
Yeah, I'll say the water deck is the straight water deck is the most susceptible to Emperor, because they're going to run Cleons. So they're not going to have summons to deal with Emperor. And even if they did, it would be just bump them back to your hand.
Right.
So they rely heavily on Cognazzo to kill him.
And Cloud of Darkness.
Cloud of Darkness, or just a really bad, if they block with Emperor and then drop one of those on top of it. Because otherwise they're not really dealing with them. So that's the one that Emperor probably hurts the most, but the other one, they don't even care. Because you play Emperor, they're probably going to use one of their 17 summons.
Exactly.
to kill him.
And there's nothing they can do about it. But I think, one of the new cards that really makes that deck better, other than Death Gaze, is Schrodinger. Yeah. That card's good.
He's
that
good.
card is really good.
There is a little bit of like RNG to him, because you don't exactly know what you're going to get off of it. But the fact that you have Realm to turn him into a 7K is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a bit better in the mono water build, just because you can play him and then he sits there, he still counts for Cognazo.
Yeah.
Whereas in like the other one, you're not running Cognazo in those builds, so he's not as good, but he still deserves thought to put in there.
Yeah, and he's also at that point he just says give Gal plus 1,000.
Yeah, it works. He's giving Gal 1,000 power. Yeah.
Exactly. So then after that, now we have Mono Earth, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah, and Mono Earth is, another just big, dumb, mid-rangey kind of deck. They have a lot of EX bursts. They have a lot of protection for their guys. And Opus 5 gave them a lot of really new, powerful cards. Star Sybil, Gravitron, the new Yang, I think, is insane. Wall, Ingus. Like, you can now have these board states to where it's like, cool, here's Light Warrior of Light, here's Wall, here's Ingus. Deal with it. Mm-hmm. Or here's Big Yang, here's Guy, here's 3 backups, here's, and you're sitting on Titans, Carbuncle. Carbuncle's another, not Carbuncle, Cockatrice. Carbuncle's really good too, but maybe not so much in Mono Earth because their guys are massive anyway. But Cockatrice, that card's really stupid. So the deck just has a way to just power through games. It'll take damage early, but it just has such staying power.
Yeah, and then you got people now running like the forward Shantoto from Opus 4.
Mm-hmm. Which is just a board wipe.
You have backup Shantoto to board wipe. You have like a lot of cool tricks now. They got a lot of cards in Opus 5. I think that really put them up because they made them just more consistent.
Yep. And then you're seeing Mono Earth decks now kind of go back to the basics. They're running, you're seeing builds that have 3 Mustadios in it just for the EX burst. You're seeing runs that are running 3 6-mana Atmos because, again, just it has 3 Raubons. Like anything that gives you this removal. Some of them are running Vincent Yuffie because, in a meta full of Mateus, turns out Vincent's pretty good.
Yeah. If you think you're going to run into straight up break effects like Odin's and Mateus, Vincent's really good. Mm-hmm. So that like we said, Ice and Lightning are like the 1 and 2. So it's never a bad call.
Yeah, against those 2 decks, you should never feel bad about swinging with Vincent because that's a nice Odin. You may kill my Yuffie, but Vincent's still alive, so don't worry about it. So. Yeah, Mono Earth is really good. I think that's a deck that has a lot of staying power. I don't know why a lot of people aren't on it. Maybe it's because of Earth Ice. Maybe it's just because you get a lot of those advantages in Earth Ice, but you also get the powerful synergies or the powerful card effects and abilities that Ice has. So they complement each other very well.
Yeah, it's just you have to win straight up with Earth.
Mm-hmm. It's very fair.
Yeah, so you have to get your to a point where your board state is just favorable for you to start really swinging through. Mm-hmm. Whereas Ice doesn't care. Ice is dole that guy, and then if you're playing Ice Earth, you still have the combat tricks that Earth would have.
Exactly.
And then with Lightning, you're just break that guy. Mm-hmm. Or you threaten power reduction, things like that.
Exactly.
Earth doesn't really have that. Earth is going to deal whatever damage it has. All those cards like Raubon and stuff, it's really reliant on how big your forwards are, except for Atmos.
Yeah. Because it can just
even Mustadio is requiring them to be dull. Mm-hmm. So that could also be bad if you run up against the Earth matchup back at you.
Yep.
And they're not tapping, you know. So still strong though.
Oh yeah. Then after that, I believe we have Fire Ice.
Yep.
Which how I feel about that. I think that deck is really, really good because it is an aggro deck, but it's not an aggro deck that's running weenies. You're running big guys that do stuff when they come in, but you're just being able to haste them out and take advantage of that early pressure. The reason we have it, kind of in the middle here is because it's a deck that you can win without really seeing much of your opponent's deck. Sometimes you just get out ahead, they can't catch up because you're stripping their hand with Lock and Genesis. Sometimes you'll play things like Birdman, or you'll play Sabin. You have Mateus, you have Shiva. You have all these cards now that can control the matchup. So no matter what they play, you don't care about it. At that point, you're swinging for 3 points a turn. Or you're just removing blockers with stuff like Red Mage and Ninja. So you play a very fast game, but sometimes you just, like I ran into in one of my matches against Greg Cole in Boston. You swing with you drop that one guy, you haste it out, and they flip a Mustadio or they flip a Atmos, and it's like, well, you spent almost your entire hand to start this pressure, but then you just get bopped by one EX burst off the top. So the deck is really good, but sometimes you overcommit without really overcommitting, and then you just get put behind.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's probably the best aggressive deck in the game right now, only because, and I think in order to play a really good aggressive deck in the game, you have to have a way to control like what they're doing on their side of the board, as well as put damage in, because early damage, some decks don't care. So like when you're playing like some fast like wind crap, and like you're hitting them, that's cool. Like, but it's going to be hard for you to get the rest of the damage in. But if you play cards like Genesis, like Luck, where you're also depleting resources while dealing damage, it becomes harder, and they have to react and play differently.
And then you're also playing guys that are just big enough to block. Like, yeah, that 2 mana 4K Tifa with haste was great for the first couple turns, but now you can't get over this 8K. Now you can't get over the 7K now without party attacking.
Yeah.
And then at that point they're just gonna dull stuff down, or I'll block that 8K party attack and I'll kill both of them for my 1 save, and I'll take that trade every time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say probably if there was anything I could compare this to as far as like how good it is as an aggressive deck, because of what it does, probably like Golbez, I guess. Because Golbez is an aggressive deck too, at least the strongest sword one.
Yeah, and I'd put Golbez probably right here on this list, as far as right around here, because Golbez is another one that when it hits, it hits.
Well, the problem is like when ice is good, and if water is anywhere in the meta, like Leviathan, 5-drop Una, that's just a nightmare for Golbez.
Oh, yeah.
Dulling freezing is not good.
Yeah.
For Golbez, so I mean you can't strong a sword if you're dulled and frozen.
Exactly, and just one Leviathan is all it takes. Just in response to Delita coming into play or them trying to break it with Kefka, it's like, all right, cool, put it back into your hand, and now they're set back so far because they spent so many resources playing that card in the first place.
Yep.
But Golbez is another one of those decks. When it hits, you probably just lose. It's just the nature of the deck, but it's very volatile.
Yeah. Like I said, it depends. Like if the water deck that you're playing against also has what it needs, the Golbez deck just loses.
Oh, absolutely, exactly.
So that's why I don't like the deck. Golbez, talking about Golbez, is because there's just too many scenarios where it's like I win or I lose.
Exactly,
and there's like not much in between. So,
whereas Fire Ice, I win, but you can still actually play a slower game if you have to, because you're running the 6 package, so you can play turn 1 backup if you don't have a haster, or you play that haster, then it's like turn 2, all right, I'll, because you'll have a backup Sage out, cool, now I'll play a turn 2 Setzer, and then I'll get my Banana Sid, then you'll start playing a slower game. And recently, I took out Vaughn, which, hurt to do, because Vaughn's been really good for me, but I think putting Orphan in that top curve spot might actually be better. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about having these spell effects, because also I was only running one Doom Train. That guy's a 3 of in my deck now. That card is just so good. And I've gone down, I've switched my summons around. I'm running 2 Mateus, 1 Shiva, 2 Belias, and 3 Doom Train. And that's with putting Orphan at the top of my curve, because it goes back to what I was saying about having spell effects on creatures is just, that creature is just innately better than that spell by itself. And more times than not in the deck, if I have to slow it down, I can get the freeze on Orphan, because most of the only really fire forward, there's only 2 fire forwards that are really going to be on my board, and that's Birdman and Sabin. Everything else is ice forwards. So more times than not, you can get the freeze effect off, but sometimes you can just haste out Orphan, dull 2 guys down, swing through with your 4 forwards, and you're just going to win. Like, you can haste out Orphan just like you hasted out Vaughn, and now you've got a 9 or 10K if you've got Duke Larg out. So now you've got what I'm trading with Vaughn is just making somebody unable to block or drawing a card, which can be helpful sometimes. But now I've got a 10K body that you can't Bahamut, you can't Phoenix. Guess what? You can Phoenix Vaughn. You can Bahamut him. You can get him out of the way with basic removal. Orphan, not so much.
Yeah, there's another key thing I think too with Orphan is that you can discard it for mana.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the big thing. Is there as many times as Vaughn won me games, there were times where he just sat in my hand because he was just clunky because I couldn't do anything.
And
with him.
I think that's an inherent issue with the card.
Yeah.
Not that Vaughn's bad.
No, I still think he's a fantastic card.
It's just he's slow. Like he gives you powerful things if he's allowed to swing, but in a matchup where two players are playing on the same like high level, it's going to be hard for you to find like a spot to get him out. I mean, there are going to be times where he's just going to win you the game, but you could say that about a lot of cards, to be honest. Oh, yeah. So, like I think he's a good card. It's just he's hard to play. Yeah, sometimes
he is, and I think I'm going to try Orphan out for a while. If it turns out Orphan's not as good, I'll go right back to Vaughn, and I've lost nothing. But
it's all about testing.
Yeah, and I just think inherently Orphan may be better in that top spot, just because I think he does more and he does it immediately.
Yep, immediate value.
Yeah, and that's what the deck is all about. Then I think after that we've got Windwater Standard Units.
Yeah, we can go to that one next. That's fine.
Okay. So Windwater Standard Units is a deck that, for some reason, nobody's playing it right now. The deck is still really good.
It's because it did get a lot of like new, cool, fancy cards. Really.
Yeah, that's true.
Like you'd probably be playing a lot of the same old stuff.
Yeah.
There's a few new things that I think are pretty good. Orator.
Yeah.
I think that card is crazy. Excellent. I'm probably going to have a build of it soon with Orator and Moogle Knight. I think are going to be what I'm going to try to run. Really good. I mean, like, just Ranger's still good. You still have the old, like, rare Opus 1 Warrior of Light, who can now become a standard unit thanks to Orator.
Yep. You've got, Unit Chaos combos still really good.
Yep, still very relevant.
Still running. Well, you got New Cloud of Darkness, which I think is really good, or Old Cloud of Darkness. I want to say like the deck is still really good. You have creatures that are hard to deal with.
Yeah, I will say maybe the reason is a lot more Shantoto.
That's possible.
So they tend to put a lot of forwards on the board, and Shantoto can really set them back. But I think you just run like Thief.
Yeah.
Zidane, and you try to get the Shantotas before they're able to play them. I mean, sometimes they might get to play a really good one on you, and there's not much you can do about it. But I think you can do things to prevent that.
Yeah. And then just being able to have a deck that where you have access to Thoughtseize and Duress type cards, or sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes all it takes is that one Zidane to pluck that card out of your hand that you were really you were ready to play next turn for the blowout, and sometimes you just fold up, and the deck has a lot of answers, and the deck can just cut on the Jets really quick with just how big. What do you do against that 12K Ranger that you can't target with abilities? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough. I think the deck is still really good. I think people will maybe start to come more around with it, but I think people are paying more attention to the higher up decks, and as well as like trying to figure out how to beat those with other decks, that they're forgetting about this deck.
Right.
And
I also think down in this tier as well is Mono Water. I believe that's what we have listed here.
Yeah, and again, this is a little bit redundant because we have the Monsters, which is, I think, probably the superior Mono Water build, but that's not to say that Mono Water is still not good. Ass Wrestler is, like, really dumb.
Yeah.
You play, like... I think, like... I played this for a little bit, testing up to Boston. Like, you play, like, turn 1 Merleweb, you get an Ash. You go turn 2, Ash, and then play Wrestler, and then it's, like... Have fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The deck's good. I think the reason we have it ranked so low is it's just slower than all of the decks that are above it. Like Mono Water has a hard time with Fire Ice. It has a hard time interacting with the monster decks. Ice just strips its hand down to nothing, and Mono Water needs cards. Mono Earth just can get bigger because in Opus 4, Mono Water was bigger than Mono Earth. Now Mono Earth is back to being bigger because now they have additional anthems. They have Ingus. They have a big ass card like Yang, and they have Wall to get people over that hump now. So Earth has kind of regained its spot as just the big dumb deck.
I think it goes back to Shantoto again. Yeah. So Mono Water has to overextend. Earth does not.
Yeah.
Mono Water, in order for it to get really big, you got to have like Ash. You got to have Refia. You need to have like, like Steiner and crap like that, as well as your backup line has to be established. For Earth to be big, it's like I got 3 backups. I got Yang. I got Ingus and Wool.
Yeah, and you're good. Or just Yang and Wall, you're great.
Yeah. You don't really have to overcommit to get big, whereas Water has to overcommit because they're pushing for like the Cognazzo plane.
Right.
So they don't really have like a way to deal with Shantoto.
Yeah, water cards just feel better when you're already ahead.
Yeah, which could maybe like you do like a water with a wind splash. I think this is something I've been thinking about too. And you run like Yastola.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Well, yeah, because Yastola is a good card.
Yeah, because I think Shantoto is really what holds that specific build of water back. And which is why monsters are so good, because you just play monsters and Shantoto can't do anything about that.
Yeah, no, it's very, very true. So I mean, now even though we've kind of gone down this list, was there one more on the list, or did that?
So I did have one thing that we didn't talk about. It's not a deck, but it's a card that I feel like we should mention, and that's Kamlanot.
Yeah.
Kamlanot's a card where he can make things really hard, like almost like we were talking about monsters in Ash. Like if he lasts for a turn, it can be really awkward for your opponent to deal with, and because of just the sheer amount of decks right now that are mono, he can just pick your color and and then in Earth specifically, you have like the Gabranth with Zodiark, and you're always probably running this guy with at least Chaos just to get something. And he thins your deck, and he makes your draws better. And he's a big guy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and he can be a nightmare for those mono lightning, those mono ice decks where it's just like cool. He's a guy that when they play that turn 1 Alua, you drop that guy. You don't unless they have the Al Cid right then and there.
Yeah.
You don't care anymore.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of times now where people are talking about you just play him turn 1.
Yeah.
Like
why not?
You just pitch the 3 cards, you drop them, and you make them have like an immediate answer in their opening hand.
Yeah, and if they don't,
then he's
You're
gonna.
good.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard, especially for mono lightning. I feel like you play that guy, they have to have Exodus at that point if he switches colors, or they just have no answer for him. And then it lets you like do whatever else you want to do the rest of the game. So.
Yeah, I think that card's real good, especially when you're running, like you said, you're using him to get chaos. Especially if you're running multicolored decks, he makes mana. Anything that can enable mana fixing is really good, and then he enables the Zodiark Gabranth combo too, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
So I think he's really good. And like I said, this list isn't finite because I know a lot of people are still fooling around with Eldenarsh. I think that card is really, really good, and that's something I expect to see a lot more people playing. I know we not so much we specifically, but I know Drew's been playing him, and like he's been like the kind of the finisher in his Palom Emporum deck.
Yeah.
And then there's variants to these decks. Like I think we need to also look at Mono Water Fasoya.
Fasoya is making a comeback for sure. Which then brings other cards in there. So like I said, the game's really balanced. I think you can play a lot of things. Like I'm not like saying that these are the decks that you have to play. I'm saying these are the decks that you should be worried about.
Oh yeah, so when you go to a tournament, you're going to see these.
Yeah,
you are going to see them.
Because I mean, you could build something that could deal with these decks that no one's thinking about. It's definitely possible. And I mean, you could blow them out the water maybe, but you will see these no matter what.
Yeah, these are the decks that when you go to a tournament. You're going to have to, the minute before you even see what your opponent's playing, you almost have to preemptively think, all right, is this going to be mono ice? Is this going to be mono earth? Is this going to be this? Is this going to be this? And when you see that first backup hit the table, you got to be like, okay, now I need to know what my deck has against this, or what do I need to prepare for next? Do I need to prepare for Alua? Do I need to prepare for, do I need to think later in the game where I know they can Shantoto? Like it becomes a thought process of you knowing your deck and knowing your matchups. That's where reps in this game, playing and having a deck that you know and play can favor you more than maybe bouncing around to other decks. But yeah, like the meta's pretty solid, and I do agree with you to kind of bring it back around to earlier. I think that Carbuncle deck, I think that's one that it's hard to play, so I don't think you'll ever see a ton of people playing it at a tournament because it is a higher level deck to play because there's so many lines, and it's so reactive.
Yeah, the only issue too is like I think that deck is really, really, really good. Like I like it a lot. But then when you come to like these bigger tournaments where people are trying to qualify for nationals, even the stronger players are going to be like, okay, what can I play that's going to get me there? Not like necessarily thinking of like, oh, what's going to just break the meta. It's more like, what can I play that I know how to play, that's safe enough, that won't lose me a lot of best of ones, that can get me to the top cut and get me to the top 4.
Oh, absolutely. And truth be told,
I mean that was the big reason why I didn't play the Carbuncle today, because on paper, I feel like that deck's insane. It has a lot of things it can do. It's really hard to deal with. but at the same time, like, if your goal is to get to top 4,
Mm-hmm.
one misstep with that deck can just, like, screw you.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's hard.
Oh, yeah. And that's one of the main reasons I play Fire Ice at these big tournaments, because I feel like that's the type of deck that can prey on a best-of-1 format. Because sometimes, like I said, most of the time I get there before really knowing what my opponent's deck is. And that's just me saying that's just the reality. If you go back and look at 90% of the matchups I've had in the 2 tournaments with this deck, most of my wins were 7 damage to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just get there before they can start playing cards. Or when they play cards, it's like, cool, that thing's dead, get it out of here. Or it's a non-factor. And just some decks, Mono Ice can do that. Cool. The only way I see your cards is making you pitch them out of your hand. It doesn't matter. There's nothing you can do. Mono Lightning, cool. I've done 4 points of damage to you, and it's already turn 3 or something.
Yeah.
These decks are powerful for a reason. People are taking them to tournaments for a reason. So be prepared for them. That's really what we're saying. Especially, they're the next 2 tournaments. We're trying to go to Kansas City.
I think we're pretty much in there now at this point.
Yeah.
I don't want to say 100%, but I've signed up.
Yeah.
And
I have also registered.
We're looking at flights, and I know we said we weren't going to go, but we've kind of made it work. Where I think we're just going to make it a quick trip. We're just there and back. The story of Bilbo Baggins.
That's right. The story of Bilbo Baggins. There it is. We're doing it.
But
we've also found the name for this episode.
Yeah. So I think that's the plan, is to hit that up, because I think all of us want to qualify.
Yeah, and I think, especially after Boston, man, I was so close. I could taste it. I could taste it.
I'm really hungry.
I want to
get something
there.
Out of this game, and I think no matter what, I'm going to be at nationals. If I don't make it, so I'll go to the last Kansas qualifier, and I'll be there for the side events and stuff.
Yeah, but I'd love to be in the main event.
It'd be great if all of us can make it. I think it'd be pretty awesome.
And then we've got Gen Con in August, and that's 2 more tournaments.
And even before the Crystal Cup, we got the Zorn and Thorn Cup and
at Pocket.
Yeah, Pocket.
And then I know we've got a tournament at Battlegrounds too, and who knows what's going to be in between that. There could be other things on the horizon that maybe the stores are.
Yeah, the main reason I want to go to Kansas City is because Gen Con is Opus 6, and I want to try one more time with Opus 5.
Yeah, I don't have to think about new cards.
Yeah, if Gen Con was Opus 5, I probably would be less likely to go to Kansas City, to be honest.
No, I agree. I agree with that. And what sucks is, I guess it's a good thing and a bad thing, because I believe one of the 2 tournaments is a limited tournament.
So I heard that one of the 2 tournaments at Gen Con is a sealed or draft or something. So I'm not sure which, and I'm not sure if that's even 100% fact.
And even if it is, that's cool, because with that being Opus 6, that'll be fine. But the constructed part's going to suck, because it's all right, well, cool, here's all these new cards that you're really going to have to cram and test for. It'll be like Ohio all over again. Granted, yes, I did very well at Ohio, but, really not having a chance to experiment with these new cards, or a lot of time to play with these new cards can hurt your chances, because you'll see something you weren't expecting, or because you haven't had enough time to even think about expecting it, what I mean? But, yeah, Kansas City's definitely on the radar first. That's what we're going to focus on, and that's a couple months away. So,
for sure.
I want to say it's a little over 2 months away, and that gives us plenty of time.
June. Yeah, end of June.
Yeah, catch the Friday flight out and the Sunday flight back. We'll be
It's the plan.
Back before you know it.
Yeah.
We're going on an adventure.
Yeah. Gotta get back to the Shire, dude.
That's right. Gotta get back to the Shire. Yes, for second breakfast.
Yeah, so I think we'll wrap it up with that. Next week we're going to be doing our episode from Fredericksburg.
Yeah.
So we're going to go up to there weekly and then sit with those guys, chat about their scene.
Mm-hmm.
The week after that, I will be out of town for a friend's wedding, so there's a chance that might not be.
Going to Milwaukee.
Yeah, there's a chance I might not be. There might not be an episode that week, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
So
we're entitled to a week off every once in a while.
Yeah. So I guess with that, we'll sign off.
Yeah, thanks for listening as always. Shout outs to everybody who follows us, supports us, likes us. Again, always be on the lookout for more content.
Yeah, and I guess just one quick more thing. We still want to do the Blitz Tech stuff, so if you have any decks that you want to send us, feel free to send me on Twitter, which is at Cronus411. Send it to our Facebook page, send it to Chris, send it to me. It doesn't matter how you send it to us.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll take a look at it, and we can make more content, for people to enjoy.
Which also, speaking of which, it also jogged my memory, so we'll sign off after this, I promise. Ron actually sent us a deck that he'd like us to look over, cool. So we've got our next one. But that don't deter you, please. If you got a pile of 50 cards that you want us to look at, send it our way. We'll go over it. We'll review it. We'll come up with multiple ways to improve it, and we'll talk about card choices. So please hit us up.
Yep. So with that, talk to you guys later.
Toodaloo.